Hey everyone, it's Stephanie Higgs, otherwise known as Little Miss Gifted. I'm here today with another incredible math resource that you may or may not know about. So, today I'm here to talk with you about three act tasks. And one of my favorites in the business with a three act task is G. Fletchy, otherwise known as Graham Fletcher. On his website, he features number activities using three act tasks for kindergarten students all the way through seventh grades. And then also, he's such a nice guy at the bottom. He has lots more references. So that goes all the way up to 12th grade. So, tons of great resources for you here. Before we dive in, I do want to show you one of G. Fletchy's recording sheets because this would be a great anchor chart for you to make. If so, you're going to want to divide an anchor chart into 6 boxes. I typically divide them into boxes of equal sizes because you're going to do this in small portions. So, a three act task means that your students will be presented with three different stimuli to help them on this mathematical journey. One of my favorite things about a three act task not only is the high engagement, so students are presented with photographs and videos and emails and all sorts of different ways to obtain this information, but students are actually going to be determining the math question for which they're solving. So that's kind of fun in a different way that we don't typically notice. So, like I said, I typically make an anchor chart with 6 boxes featuring these 6 questions. However, I do typically make all of those boxes the same size. So, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to think about asking your students, what do they notice and what do they wonder? So in just a second, when I peek at a couple of Fletchy's different three act tasks, there that would be the first thing I would do. I would give students about 20 seconds to think about what they noticed and what they wondered. Then I would have a few students share out and I would record those on that anchor chart. After that, you're going to have students kind of puzzling through, okay, so what do you think the main question might be? Just kind of get them started thinking about that. And then you're going to reveal Act Two. So that's going to give them some additional information so that as a group, you can determine the main question for which you're solving. At that point, you're going to have students estimate. And sometimes he suggests having students estimate one that's a little bit too high, as well as an estimate that's a little bit too low. I think some of our students feel uncomfortable estimating because they really want to be correct. And so having kind of three estimates, kind of one that's probably on the high side, one that's on the low side, and like a Goldilocks one that's just right, will help your students perhaps feel a little bit more safe in the idea of estimation. And then after that, they're going to think about, okay, so what other information do they need to solve? So at that point, they're going to have seen Act One. Now they're going to make sure that they've seen Act Two. And then Act Two is going to usually give them that additional information that they need. At that point, students are going to finish solving the problem and they're going to give you what they think is their final answer. Once you've done that, you're going to show Act Three, which will result in students seeing that final answer. So let's peek at two. Let's peek at a kindergarten example and a fifth grade example. So this is one that I love. You could do this with kindergarten, perhaps even first grade early in the year, but it's called Humpty Dumpty. And this cutie little girl comes running around the corner and she opens up that refrigerator. And a carton of eggs falls flat on the floor. So immediately, what are students noticing? What are students wondering? We always tell them, think about their math brain. They might get sidetracked with, the color of the oven or, something like that. But thinking about math. So maybe they're noticing, oh, I see 4 handles in this picture. Oh, you know what? I actually see 6. I see 4 that are circles. And then I see 2 that are longer and more like rounded rectangles. I see squares on the floor. They're starting to make a pattern. So that's me using my mathematical mind to make those observations. So when I'm thinking about what I'm noticing, I really want to be focused on the math that I'm noticing. So have them notice, have them wonder. At that point, you'll go down a little bit further. And so students are going to estimate, okay, so how many eggs do they think broke? So that's kind of that main question. So again, you're solving all this up front in Act One. And that's really the question students are wondering is how many eggs broke? And then they're going to make an estimate. Again, to kind of level that up, you could always have them make 3 estimates. Sometimes that feels safer, a little bit too low, a little bit too high, and a just right estimate. At that point, you're going to show students Act Two. And so that's going to include some additional photographs that you can click on. And at that point, students will be able to see how many eggs were in the carton to start with, and then how many eggs did not break. By this point, some of your students will start making their connections of, okay, if I knew this many were in the carton to start and this many didn't break, I always use that as an opportunity to teach my students the idea of whole minus part equals part, kind of like a number bond, or part plus part makes a whole. Well, we know our whole number. We know how many eggs were in the carton to start. We also know one of our parts. We know how many didn't break. So if we said whole minus part, that's going to give us our other part. So at this point, students will try to solve that problem. And then last but not least, you can show them Act 3, which is going to reveal the correct solution. So your students will get to find out if they were correct. Now let's jump over to a fifth grade example. This one is always super popular. You could really use this. I've used it in fourth as well as fifth, depending on where your students' present levels are. But basically, Act 1, they're going to see this huge, giant set of Krispy Kreme donuts. Again, they're going to think about what they notice. They're going to think about what they wonder. I let my students turn to a mathematical partner and do kind of a quick partner share. I have a few of them share out and I record that on an anchor chart. So what did a few of us notice? What did a few of us wonder? At that point, they're going to try to go ahead and determine what's the mathematical equation that we're solving for. And then they may even go ahead and estimate. So at this point, you've shown them, a few different photographs. So when we look at this compared to a loading truck, look how large it is. Look how many people it's taking to load that onto the truck carefully. So how many donuts do we think are in the box would be the mathematical question that we're solving for today. And then estimate. Again, an estimate we know is a little too high, a little too low, and one that we think is that just right estimate. At that point, you'll reveal Act 2, which is going to give some dimensions of the box in a letter from the UK. Now, they've strategically marked out certain information. So, again, it's still not going to give your students the answer, but it is going to give them additional information that they'll need to attempt to solve. If students are still struggling, again, great differentiation. You can tell them how many rows and columns per layer there are. So, again, lots of challenge embedded in this activity. Students will continue to solve and come up with a solution. You'll record that in your anchor chart before finally looking at Act 3. So you'll get to see that same email again with all the information presented, and then also a really fun news report. So these are highly engaging to our students. They are highly motivating. Again, this can serve our mathematicians from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. It is nice if you ever have someone that's team teaching with you, partner teaching with you, student teaching with you. It's great if you can have one teacher act as the recorder while another teacher acts as kind of the facilitator of a 3-act task. So lots of great discussions around numbers, lots of rich conversations as mathematicians. Great if you can have 2 people, but you can certainly make this work as a solo teacher, as so many of us are. But I hope you enjoyed that. I would definitely recommend heading over to G. Fletchy's website to learn a little bit more about how you can discuss numbers and talk about numbers through a 3-act task in your classroom. These can be a great kind of culminating activity at the end of your unit, and I can't wait to hear what you think. If you have any questions, you're welcome to email me, littlemissgiftedteacher@gmail.com. And I would love to see you over on my Instagram at Little Miss Gifted. Hope to hear from you really soon. Thanks for all the hard work you're doing to support your mathematicians.